Let's first look at the process of creating output that displays to standard output, the computer screen. Python uses a special function to communicate information from the software to the humans using the software, and this special function is called print. You probably remember using this in some examples in class and also in our first lab. Print is a reserved word in Python. That means it's something that you can't use for an identifier for a variable or for other purposes. It's special and reserved just for this specific purpose. It's used to display information to standard output. The print command has this format. It always starts with the reserved word print, and then you include the item or items to print inside parentheses. The parentheses are used to delimit where the information to display begins and where the information to display ends. The item that we print out can be any of the following. It can be a literal numeric value, it could be a literal string value, it could be the value stored inside a variable, or it can be the result of an expression that involves variables, literals, or both. Let's do some examples of output. Notice that in your notes, you can tell which part of the items are part of the user's communication because they're preceded by the Python prompt, just like they are when we look at them in the Python window. Let me open a Python window now. Because we won't be sharing the software that we're creating in these examples, I'm just going to type it at the Python interpreter prompt. However, if you wanted to save these and share them with others, you could save them to a file as well. Feel free to type along as we look through the examples in our notes. First, let's just do a simple print out a literal numeric value, print 3. Python will oblige and print the value 3. We've also seen examples where we include a text literal like hello, and Python is happy to print out the contents of that string literal, all the characters associated with it. Sometimes in your program, you might want to print a blank line, and if you do, you can say print and include nothing inside the parentheses. That prints a blank line to the screen. That can be really handy when you're creating a lot of output in your program, helps to visually break up the text that you're displaying, so it's easier for your end user to comprehend. It's also possible to use a special character string to indicate that you want to move to the next line, and that special character string is called the new line character. The new line character looks like a \n, and you put that inside double quotes. It will do exactly the same thing as printing a blank line. You can use that in combination with character literals and with variable values. So if you wanted to print the value hello followed by the new line character, you could say print hello, comma, and then the character string for the new line is \n. So it'll print hello and then a blank line. You can also print the value that's stored inside a variable. For example, in our program, if we have a variable sum and it's assigned the value 10, we can say print sum, and Python will know to go to the memory location associated with that identifier sum and retrieve the value stored there. It'll display the contents of the variable, which is 10. You can do this with any variable in your program. So if you had a variable called month and it stores the value 1 and you said print month, Python would print out 1. You can also print the result of arithmetic expressions. Let me move my screen so it's easier to see. So if you wanted to print out the result of the expression 1 + 2 + 3, you could tell Python print and then list the entire expression inside the parentheses. When Python evaluates this, it will evaluate the expression first. 1 + 2 is 3, 3 + 3 is 6, so it calculates the answer 6, and then you're displaying it to the screen, so it prints the 6. You can also print out the result a expression involving strings. So if we use the concatenation operator to print the string hello and the string Karen, Python will print those two strings next to each other. Remember that Python doesn't add any spaces when it uses the concatenation operator. So if we wanted to add punctuation or a space, we would have to include that in our string literal. So we wanted it to say hello, comma, space, and then Karen. Whoops. We wanted to print hello, comma space, Karen, we would have to include the comma space as part of one of the literals. Python can also perform arithmetic operations involving variables and display those results. So for example, if we wanted to add the value of our variable sum to itself, we could say print sum plus sum, and Python will calculate the value of sum plus sum and get the answer 20 and then display the result. It's also possible in Python to print out multiple items on the same line without using the concatenation operator. The concatenation operator only really works well when both of the operands are strings. But there's lots of times in our program where we'll want to be printing both the value of a numeric variable and also a label or string value. For example, we might want to say something like the result is sum. And if we try to use the concatenation operator here, I'll show you, we're going to get an error message that says it can't concatenate the string to the integer. Python's just not set up to do that with the plus sign operator. It knows how to apply the addition operator to two numeric values, and it knows how to apply the concatenation operator to two string values, but it doesn't work if you have one of each. If you want to print a label and a numeric value, the better option is to include a comma between them. Comma comes after the double quotes close for the literal value, and then before you begin the variable identifier that you want to display. And when you do that, Python does automatically add a space, which is very handy. You can also print the result of an expression like 1 plus 2, and then label the value after the numeric information is displayed. So you could say 1 plus 2 is the answer. And again, remember, it already adds a space when you include the comma. And so I put an extra space in here before the is. I should probably remove that to make my output look better. Now it looks normal with just one space between the numeric value and the word. Let's look at another example where we have multiple values that we want to display. Suppose we have a variable value 1 and a variable value 2 and a variable value 3, and they're each storing a numeric value. If we want to display all three values, we can do that in a single print command. Just list each of the variables that we want to display the contents of and separate them all by commas. Remember, Python will include spaces in between them, so it's easy to tell where one value ends and the next value begins. As a reminder, sometimes students like that concatenation operator that we learned about with strings, and it works great if both of the values that you're trying to print are text pieces of information. If they're both string data, that works fantastically. If both of the operands are numbers, it also works great. If you want to print 3 plus 5 and you want it to add those two values and then print the result, then the print operator will perform as you expect it to. But if you want to print the value of a variable that's numeric and also want to print a label next to it, like number equals 3, print the answer is plus number, Python will tell you it doesn't know how to do that because it can't apply the concatenation operator to a numeric value and a string value. It only knows how to do numbers and numbers or strings and strings. And remember that you can always correct that by using the comma instead. I recommend using the comma in general because it just makes life easier. If you don't get used to using the concatenation operator when you're trying to display things, then you won't run into that problem. And the comma operator also works if you have strings and strings. And just like before, it adds the space in there between the two text values, which is generally convenient. And the comma also works to separate numeric values. If you want to print both a 3 and a 5, you could separate them with a comma and it will print the result values. So in general, when you're trying to print multiple items using a single print command, use the comma, not the concatenation operator, because it'll save you a lot of headaches.